In the autumn of 1805, the Lewis and Clark expedition was in serious trouble. Food stores were critically low. The party was exhausted, weakened, and facing the possibility of starvation, deep in unfamiliar territory. And then, a group of indigenous people showed them something growing beneath the ground along the riverbanks, a chain of small tubers, strung together like beads on a root, that saved the expedition. Lewis and Clark ate this plant for days. It sustained them through one of the most dangerous stretches of their entire journey. Clark wrote in his journal that the tubers were nutritious and palatable. And this plant, the one that may have saved the most famous American expedition in history, is a perennial, native to North America, that also fixes nitrogen into the soil, and that almost nobody in America grows today. The plant is called the American groundnut. Scientific name, Apios americana, also known as Hopniss, potato bean, and Indian potato. And the story of how this extraordinary native food plant went from saving Lewis and Clark to near total obscurity in less than 200 years is one of the most remarkable stories in American agricultural history. By the end of this video, the American groundnut will be understood as one of the most important and most overlooked food plants native to this continent. And the question of why it is not in every American food garden will have a clear and genuinely surprising answer. American groundnut grows wild across the eastern United States, from Florida to Quebec, from the Atlantic coast to the Great Plains. It thrives in the moist, rich soils of stream banks, forest edges, and floodplain margins. It is a vine, climbing through shrubs and small trees, producing clusters of fragrant reddish-brown flowers in summer, and chains of tubers underground that range in size from a large marble to a small potato. It is a legume, a member of the bean family, which means it forms the same symbiotic relationship with nitrogen-fixing bacteria in its root nodules that beans and peas do. It pulls nitrogen from the atmosphere, converts it into a form usable by plants, and enriches the soil it grows in, while simultaneously producing its food crop underground, a food plant that fertilizes the soil for everything growing around it. Indigenous peoples across the eastern United States had been cultivating and harvesting American groundnut for thousands of years before European contact. The Wampanoag, the Algonquin, the Cherokee, the Iroquois, the Lenape, dozens of nations, incorporated groundnut into their food systems as a significant starchy staple. It was eaten roasted, boiled, dried and ground into flour, and prepared in multiple traditional ways across different cultures. When the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth in 1620, they were facing starvation during their first winter. The Wampanoag people, as part of their assistance to the struggling colonists, introduced them to American groundnut. Historical accounts document the colonists eating groundnut tubers, which they described as a reliable and sustaining food. The plant that helped keep the Mayflower colonists alive through their first American winter is still growing wild in Massachusetts today. Almost nobody in Massachusetts knows what it is. The Pilgrims and Plymouth Colony. Lewis and Clark, two of the most iconic moments in American history, both involving this one plant. And somehow, it became invisible. The tubers of American groundnut contain approximately 16 to 17% protein by dry weight. This is extraordinary for a tuber. Potatoes contain approximately 8% protein by dry weight. Sweet potatoes contain approximately 6%. American groundnut contains twice the protein of potato and nearly 3 times the protein of sweet potato from a plant that grows wild, fixes its own nitrogen, and has been feeding North Americans for thousands of years. The protein quality is also good. American groundnut contains a useful complement of essential amino acids, and as a legume, its protein profile is more complete than most root vegetables. Combining groundnut with grain, as indigenous communities did for millennia, creates a nutritionally complete protein source from entirely locally grown native plants. The tubers also provide meaningful amounts of calcium, iron, and dietary fiber. The flavor, when properly prepared, is described consistently as nutty, rich, and more complex than potato. Roasted, the tubers develop a deep savory character, almost reminiscent of a chestnut or a dense roasted sweet potato. Boiled, they are more potato-like, but with that underlying nuttiness that distinguishes them clearly from conventional potatoes. Now here is the detail that makes American groundnut genuinely revolutionary as a food plant. American groundnut is a perennial. In zones 3 through 9, it overwinters from its tuber chains and returns every spring. The vine regrows. The tuber chains expand. Each year, the underground network of tubers grows larger and more productive. A well-established American groundnut planting, after 3 to 4 years, produces substantial harvests from a plant that was never replanted, never fertilized, and required almost no intervention. The nitrogen fixation benefit accumulates year over year. As the root system grows larger, the nitrogen fixing capacity increases. Neighboring plants benefit more. Soil quality improves progressively. American groundnut is not just a food crop. It is a soil-building system that happens to produce food. Plant it once, and it makes everything around it more productive, indefinitely. The scientific interest in American groundnut has been growing steadily since the 1980s. Researchers at Louisiana State University, led by Dr. John Blackman, conducted extensive breeding work with American groundnut in the 1980s and 1990s, selecting for larger tuber size, higher yields, and improved flavor. The results were striking. Selected varieties produced tubers significantly larger than wild types, with yields competitive with conventional potato in comparable growing conditions. Published research has confirmed American groundnut's nitrogen fixation capacity, its protein content, and its potential as a sustainable food crop for North American climates. A review published in Economic Botany documented the extraordinary cultural history of this plant and argued for its serious consideration as a modern food crop. The scientific case for American groundnut as an important underutilized food plant is well established in the academic literature. So why, given this extraordinary history, this nutritional profile, this nitrogen-fixing perennial nature, and this documented scientific potential, is American groundnut almost completely absent from American gardens and farms today? The answer comes down to two honest factors. The first is the time investment before significant harvest. American groundnut produces tubers in its first year, but the tubers are small in year 1. Year 2 is better. Year 3 and 4, the harvest becomes genuinely substantial. In a food culture shaped by annual vegetables that produce large harvests in a single season, a perennial that takes 3 years to reach full productivity is at a commercial disadvantage. Patience is required, and patience, in modern agriculture, is a scarce resource. The second is the lack of commercial infrastructure. No major seed company markets American groundnut. No grocery chain carries it. No agricultural extension service actively promotes it. Without the promotional and distribution infrastructure that supports conventional crops, a genuinely superior food plant can remain invisible to the millions of gardeners who would enthusiastically grow it if they simply knew it existed. Growing American groundnut is genuinely straightforward for a patient gardener. It grows in zones 3 through 9. It prefers moist, rich, well-draining soil and partial to full sun. It is a vine reaching 6 to 12 feet and needs something to climb. A trellis, a fence, or neighboring shrubs all work. It tolerates wetter soil conditions than most food plants, making it excellent for stream-adjacent or seasonally wet garden areas. Plant tubers in spring after the last frost, 3 to 4 inches deep, 12 to 18 inches apart. Water consistently during the first season while the root system establishes. After year 1, American groundnut becomes considerably more self-sufficient. It tolerates moderate drought once established, due to its deep perennial root system. Harvest tubers in autumn after the vines die back. Dig carefully. The tuber chains can extend 2 feet or more from the crown. Leave some tubers in the ground to regenerate next season. The chains of tubers, connected by thin roots, look extraordinary when lifted, like a necklace of small potatoes strung together underground. Prepare them immediately or store in cool, dry conditions for several weeks. Tubers are available from specialty native plant nurseries, edible landscaping in Virginia, and various native plant societies across the eastern United States. Carry American groundnut. Seeds are available from some specialty suppliers, though tubers establish more reliably and produce faster. This is a plant where connecting with a local native plant community often provides the easiest access to planting material. American groundnut, Apios Americana, the tuber that helped save Plymouth Colony in 1620, the plant that sustained Lewis and Clark in 1805, native to eastern North America, 16 to 17% protein by dry weight, double that of potato, perennial from zones 3 through 9, nitrogen fixing, soil building, and one of the most overlooked food plants on the continent where it was born. Drop Lewis in the comments if the Lewis and Clark survival story is what stopped everything, and drop Plymouth if the Pilgrims connection was the moment this plant became real. Let's see which piece of American history landed hardest. Subscribe to Famine Plant Secrets for extraordinary forgotten plants every single week.